What's up, everybody? Welcome back. You know what time it is. It's Thursday. We're talking Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's, 2 for 7. Gotta be Wendy's. The dynamic duos at Wendy's. We talked about them last week. We're going to talk about them again this week. We got a lot of recruiting stuff. Pretty much a recruiting-centric show here between yours truly, Spencer Holbrook, and Mick Walker. Mick, how you doing, man? We were in Nashville for a little bit. Got to hang out with the crew down on 3. Now we're back in Columbus, all Lettermen Row, full steam ahead. And Ohio State has a new defensive coordinator. But, in the meantime, how are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, like you said, Spencer and I have been seeing a lot of each other, and it probably is not slowing down with spring ball starting up here in like a month or so. So gonna be a little lull here. Spencer's gonna be busy with Valentine's Day, getting his house in order with all his work, but we're gonna be powering through for all the content people, all the people at Lettermen Row and inside the Lettermen Lounge.
Not the craziest holiday for everyone, but Valentine's Day for some, kind of crazy. Happy early Valentine's Day if you partake in such a holiday. If you don't, well, find some love in your life. Find some love, whether that be Ohio State football. I know you all love Ohio State football. Whether that be you fall in love with Mick and over there on the other side of that screen. I think he's already got a Valentine, but that's okay. He can have two. Make sure you tag Mick Walker in a tweet and say, Mick, will you be my Valentine? We should all do that. But in the meantime, Ohio State hired a new defensive coordinator, Mick. His name is Matt Patricia. He is a noted defensive coordinator for 2 Super Bowls with the Patriots. He won another Super Bowl with the Patriots as an offensive line assistant before he got his career on the defensive side, kind of riled up. He's been with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2023. He was the head coach of the Detroit Lions from 2018 to 2020. Disastrous tenure there, but doesn't overshadow the things that he's done on the defensive side. First of all, before we get into the recruiting of it all, what did you think of the hire?
I just pure football wise, I think that you have to like the hire to some extent. Seems like he's a well-respected football coach. Obviously, multiple times Super Bowl winning assistant. Did not do very well as a head coach in his last 10 years. His last little run there with the Philadelphia Eagles did not end well. But I think football wise, defensive coordinator, head coach of the defense type of thing, you have to like it. Getting to see Matt Guerrieri and Tim Walton both get promotions as well in title and I imagine in pay is pretty awesome for those guys as well. So all around, it seemed like a good fit for the defense. I imagine James Laurinaitis will get a pay raise or two. And then obviously the big question comes with Larry Johnson, but that's an every offseason question. Purely Matt Patricia, I'm intrigued to see how it looks on the field come August 30th.
Did you say 2 pay raises? Maybe a pay raise or 2? That would be, hey, can I get a pay raise or 2? Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. But I think it's interesting, man. Like, no matter what you think about this hire, good, bad, indifferent, whether you hate it, you might think it's the worst hire ever. Hey, it's interesting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no matter what you think of the hire, the word that you have to use with it is interesting because it's not something we saw Ryan Day doing. And Ryan Day has earned some cachet. He has a national championship ring now. So he has earned the right to pick the guy that he wants to run his defense. And, they did their homework. They did their background checks. I know there's some questions about the background there. Ohio State is not going to, put itself out there for that kind of thing. They're going to do their homework. They're going to make sure that they're buttoned up before they make a hire. They haven't officially named this hire yet. They haven't named any of the offensive hires either. That should be coming soon because we're expecting all of these to be done. I do know that there's going to be some downtime, some away time now that the defensive coordinator's hired. So we'll see when those official announcements come in and we get to talk to these guys. I would love to be able to talk to Matt Patricia soon. I would love to be able to talk to Tim Walton, Matt Guerrieri about how this all came together. I would love to talk to Tyler Bowen about on the offensive line side of things and see, what the deal is with him and how he's going to mold in with this group and Billy Fessler. So like all of these hires now are complete. The staff isn't complete because they've still got to fill it with some of these, not lower level staffers, but off the field assistants or assistant offensive line coach and assistant secondary coach and things like that. But, the bottom line is like the 10, as I like to call it, the 10 assistants, that is done. Ohio State has all 10. Something could change. Maybe Larry Johnson decides to step away after a long storied career. We don't know. But no matter what you think of this new coaching staff, the word that you have to use is interesting because Ryan Day replaced Jim Knowles, the best defensive coordinator in college football. Not my words, Ryan Day's words, with Matt Patricia, who's never coached defensive football in college football. He replaced Chip Kelly, a fantastic, well-known offensive coordinator, with a quarterback's coach who's unproven, and Brian Hartline, who's also unproven as a play caller. So it's really interesting to see how this is all going to come together, and I imagine it will come together pretty well in the spring, Nick, and we're going to have a good idea of what this thing looks like by spring ball.
Yeah, I'll be fascinated to see and talk to all these guys when the opportunity comes about, just because a lot of these guys we don't know much about. Matt Patricia don't know much about. Tyler Bowen, you don't know much about. And then some of the guys like Tim Walton or Matt Carrera, they haven't spoke much, despite being at Ohio State. They don't speak much on the record. So now it seems like we're going to be positioned to have weekly or bi-weekly press conferences with Matt Patricia, Brian Hartline, along with getting your Ryan Day press conference once you get into the season. So just hearing from those guys will be fascinating. I've listened. I tried to listen to some Matt Patricia podcasts recently, and he seems like an interesting guy that's kind of rehabilitated his image as much as he could following the 10-year in Detroit. So I'm fascinated to see what he looks like and how he is to interact with once he gets inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.
You're probably wondering why I laughed, didn't you, Mick?
I'm always wondering why you're laughing, Spencer.
You said, Matt Carrera, Tim Walton, a lot of these assistants don't talk on the record. It's like, well, what, Mick? Do people think that we talk to these assistants when we're not supposed to? We would never.
I don't personally.
We would never. Lettermen Row, everybody on the beat, Ohio State, stays within the bounds of only talking to coaches on the record.
Everything goes through Jerry and Mick.
Absolutely. Shout out to Jerry, man. He's great at what he does. I think he's about to take a vacation. That guy deserves it, man. He gets some flack from a small minority, the lunatic fringe, if you will, of the fan base. But Jerry's great, man. He's great at what he does. All right, let's keep up with this Patricia stuff. Mick, we can't get to the recruiting stuff just yet because on field, I heard on a podcast yesterday, again, we're kind of starting to learn who Matt Patricia is as a defensive mind. And we're not just going to take what the Lions players said about him as a disaster. But we're not just going to take, even like what Bobby Carpenter says is he's the great, he's a great coach who's great. We're going to try to find a middle there and try to find out who this guy really is. But one thing that caught my attention with Matt Patricia on a recent podcast, and I apologize to whoever did it. I know they're always watching because we have millions of people watching this. Whoever he said it to, I apologize, I can't remember, but he said something along the lines of, we're always going to mold our defense to what our personnel does. And that's not verbatim either, but that's kind of the gist of it. And hey, like Larry Johnson loves that 4 down front, right? Jim Knowles loves his 4-2-5. Well, it sounds to me like Matt Patricia loves good defense. So if he needs to run a 4-3, he's going to run 4-3. If he needs to run a 4-2-5, he's going to run a 4-2-5. If he needs to switch to an odd front and get a jack in the box, if you will, and play that hybrid guy, he's going to do it. What does that mean? That means great news for CJ Hicks, who is a tweener who is trying to find his role on this team in his 4th year, and who I've already reported is making that move small, kind of down to the edge as a smaller edge rusher who could be, pretty dangerous in that spot. It means great news for Caleb Downs, who Jim Knowles started to use in creative ways. Matt Guerrero started to use creatively. Matt Patricia says he wants to mold his defense to the personnel. Well, the best personnel that you could possibly have in this sport right now is Caleb Downs. Who else does it mean good news for? Jermaine Matthews. It's a guy who could play in the slot next year. He could play on the outside next year. However he best fits into Patricia's defense with Tim Walton as a co-defensive coordinator, I think he's going to be used in a big way. It means great news for Sonny Styles, who, whatever you want to say about him, continue to get better as a linebacker. So, like, the biggest names, I think this is the best news for. Because the Buckeyes under Matt Patricia, based on what he said on podcasts, are going to put these guys who are so gifted and so good in the best position for them to be successful and not try to put them into a defense that maybe they're not going to be able to be the best at playing.
Yeah, another big guy would be Edric Houston, who's kind of a tweener when it comes to size-wise, length-wise, between being a full end and a full tackle. So maybe he's somebody that can flex in and out depending on what kind of size front you're in. But I think we both listened to the same podcast. Might have just been the same clip. I believe it's like a 3-hour podcast he did with Julian Edelman on the Games with Names show, I believe is what Julian Edelman's podcast is called.
Dude, I'm powering through that thing. I'm working on it.
I believe that clip comes from that. And listening to it, and this is more off the football field stuff, just because I know there's a lot of questions about Matt Patricia, the person, and how things ended in Detroit. If you go back and listen to that, Julian Edelman, who was a offensive player, a wide receiver at New England, loved everything that Matt Patricia did, loved talking about football with him, and it goes back and forth. There's different guys that you can go through that New England team, and obviously when you win, things are a lot easier to handle. But everybody there says good things about him. There's other people that say great things about him. I know somebody that had crossed paths with him. I'm hoping to kind of catch up with them and see if I can shake loose a little bit of information on just how that kind of goes. And I was told last week from talking to a different source, just that with Larry Johnson, it would depend on if they got the right guy. Now, who knows if Matt Patricia is the right guy to be the defensive coordinator. And I imagine that's being kind of settled out right now. But I also imagine that when Matt Patricia takes his tour around the Woody Hayes Athletic Center this week, some Larry Johnson or the idea of what Larry Johnson does was mentioned to him. And that fit will then be kind of discussed and hammered out here in the coming weeks before you get into spring ball, because all that stuff you would like to have, especially with a new defensive coordinator, you'd like to have it solidified going into a spring where you're losing a lot on defense, I guess.
You are losing a lot. You're losing 8 starters, but the 3 starters that you bring back are pretty damn good starters, right? Davis Nick-Benosin, really good. Needs to get, work on that holding a little bit. But Matt Patricia, an NFL guy. Tim Walton, an NFL guy. Like, they know how to get these guys ready to play NFL football. That's Davis Nick-Benosin's primary goal. He didn't come back to Ohio State to try to win a national championship. He's already done that. He wants to be a first-round pick. There's 2 guys that can probably get you there. Tim Walton, who's a secondary coach in the league for 20 years, and Matt Patricia, who's only ever coached college or the NFL on the defensive side. So, that I think that's good news for him. Caleb Downs is another returner. Like I said, what's he going to do? 1 more year and he's to the NFL. He's got to be really good next year. Who's really good at getting him there? Tim Walton, 20 years in the NFL. Matt Patricia, only ever coached in the NFL on the defensive side. Then the third guy, Sonny Styles, what does he want to do? He wants to become an Ohio State legend because he's a local kid, but he also wants to get to the NFL and be a really high draft pick. James Laurinaitis, NFL player. Matt Patricia, coached the NFL. You see a trend here? Like, I think that it's the best news for, again, I'm just going to keep saying it, it's the best news for the returning starters, because these guys, all 3, really want to get to the NFL and be high-level NFL players. And Matt Patricia is going to run an NFL-style defense, and Tim Walton is going to help him do that.
And it's good for even the players that haven't played a whole lot. Like you if you're Matt Patricia, you turn on the game film this season, you see a lot of Caden Curry clips here in the third and the fourth quarter, and you go, oh, this guy looks really good as a defensive end. What if we put him in a 5 down front or put him in an odd front and put him as an outside linebacker? Is that better for him? And then if you have the autonomy to run that kind of defense, that's good for him. Putting Caden McDonald as a pure nose tackle over top the center for 40 snaps a game or whatever that may be, that could be better for him. And then, like you said, there's whether it's Lorenzo Styles, Jermaine Matthews playing nickel, is there somebody out there that fits into that mold? Even if you can move one of the outside corners, Aaron Scott, Devin Sanchez, could they start at nickel and kind of move? Like, who's to say how he sees this defense kind of coming in? But you have to like on the field defensively what he's done in the past and kind of getting some of these guys. Like, I know Spencer and I are Steelers fans. You AFC football, you have guys like Dante Hightower, Jamie Collins. Like, you run down the list of guys that they had, and a lot of them were size-wise, frame-wise, kind of misfits when it comes to what they play, but New England always had them playing really well on defense because Matt Patricia, Bill Belichick, Steve Belichick, all those guys up there put their players in the best position to do what they are great at.
Yeah, and I mean, look at a guy like Arvell Reese. Kind of reminds you of that. Maybe he's a lot bigger than most linebackers, but Patricia's worked with some of those bigger linebackers. So that's a great point that I didn't even think of. But now it kind of brings to mind Arvell Reese, and maybe this is the best news for Arvell Reese. So, I think, when you ask, like, okay, who's happy about this move? Who's not happy about this move? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of people in the building that are like, I don't know about this. Like, they all seem to be like, okay, like, I think we can work with this. So, I just think that that's something kind of to munch on there, and to think about, some food for thought there, if you will, Mick. The other thing that I'm really wanting to get food for thought, I'm trying to get just regular, plain, what food. And this is far from plain, but it's great food. And I haven't eaten today. It's 12:35 p.m. I'm really hungry, so I'm going to talk about Wendy's now. Again, 15 minutes into this bad boy, I've done it twice. It's Lettermen Live presented by Wendy's for a reason. 2 faves for just $7. It's got to be Wendy's. Terms apply, of course. But, hey, you want 10 nuggets and that spicy chicken sandwich? Oh, my gosh, 2 for $7? You want a burger, Dave Single, and a spicy chicken sandwich? I might go eat that right now because I'm so hungry. It's got to be Wendy's. 2 for $7. I might add some fries on. Then it'll be like $10. I get a full lunch. And then I get to go about my day talking ball with Mick Walker. How's that sound? Sounds great to me. Which brings us to our next segment, Mick, is the Wendy's dynamic duo. There is no other option here. I'm not even going to give you an option. We're just going to talk about it. The dynamic duo that we're going to talk about, presented by Wendy's, is Tim Walton and Matt Patricia. Can we talk about anybody else? Absolutely not. The dynamic duo is Matt Patricia and Tim Walton. What do you think that they're going to be like as far as like a, marrying of the minds here as defensive coordinator, co-defensive coordinator with Patricia as the defensive coordinator and Walton as the co-defensive coordinator?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes. I think Tim Walton has a lot of experience when it comes to coaching secondaries, scheme wise. Obviously, he called defense for a couple of seasons there in the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars, I believe. If I could be wrong, at some point he does have defensive coordinating experience in the NFL. I'm not exactly sure when that came, but he is the guy that knows a lot of football. He knows more football than you and I even have ever learned in our life. So I
Oh
think it'll
yeah,
be interesting to see how he marries the game with what Matt Patricia wants to do in the front seven. And honestly, Matt Patricia might have some opinions on what they want to do in the secondary. Tim Walton might have some opinions on what they do in the front seven, because when you take away time you make quarterbacks uncomfortable in the pocket, it's better for Tim Walton's secondary and vice versa. So I think that's something, that dynamic duo, like you said, it's the primary dynamic duo that we're paying attention to. And if I might add, last week, my wife and I, my favorite dynamic duo, my wife and myself, that's my favorite dynamic duo. We were driving around and we were looking to get some food. And she said, "Where should we eat?" And I said, Wendy's has 2 for $7. So we can get 2 10-piece chicken nuggets. We can get 2 sandwiches. We can do whatever we would like there, 2 for $7 entrees for dinner. And she looked at me and she goes, "There is no way that Wendy's has 2 for $7 on the 10-piece chicken nugget or on the chicken sandwich." And I said, "Yes, there is. You got to listen to Lettermen Live podcast. You can also subscribe to Lettermen Row, $1. We're moving around that sale, but you can sign up for Lettermen Row now. There's different sales going on at different times to come in and join us. $1 gets you around for a certain amount of time. We're working on a different sale, but sign up now.
it's
It'll be a good time.
$1 every week for an entire freaking year, man.
That's true. $1 for a year, so that's $52. Rolls over. You're doing great. You're doing great. Every
It's
single week, $1.
7 dynamic duos.
Just rolls over. $1 a week. That's, you guys spend more. You guys get things consistently every week that are more than $1 a week. So Lettermen Row will be as good a value as any of those items.
Yeah. So dynamic duos: Wendy's, Freedom, Matt Patricia, America. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so Matt Patricia, Tim Walton. We're kind of being goofy here. I love this. I love this show because I just kind of like let loose for the week. I'm done with my week. It's Thursday. I still got to work on Friday, but Thursday's like the start of my weekend, because Friday I try to get as much work as I can done and then be able to have my weekend. Tim Walton and Matt Patricia on the field. Tim Walton is a brilliant mind in the secondary. Matt Guerrieri is going to help with the passing defensive coordinating. He's the new defensive pass game coordinator, which is important. So Guerrieri will have his hands tied there with Walton in the secondary. Then Walton's going to work his way down with James Laurinaitis and linebackers. Laurinaitis and Patricia will work linebackers and defensive line together. I think this staff actually is going to be pretty well aligned, Mick. With Laurinaitis, with Patricia, with Larry Johnson if he stays, with Walton, with Guerrieri. We'll see what happens there. Ryan Day not going to need to have his hand in that cookie jar like he did last year, trying to get everybody aligned. It seems like it's almost like a free-flowing, like everybody's got a couple responsibilities here, and you're going to have a pretty good time in this defensive room. But what I wanted to ask you about, because this is your area of expertise, is the recruiting trail, Mick. What does this mean for the recruiting trail? Like, what do you see this meaning for the recruiting trail?
Big picture, we truly don't know because he hasn't recruited. He has not recruited high school prospects since before many of these high school prospects that Ohio State is currently recruiting were even born. He has not recruited high school prospects since 2003. So just on the field, talking to high school prospects we don't know. Yesterday, catching up with some different guys, I caught up with Sincere Johnson, who was really high on the hire and the promotion of Tim Walton, the 4-star linebacker out of Glenville. Jacob Witherspoon, Ohio State's lone defensive commit out of Avon, Ohio, also very high on the hire. There's different guys going back and forth. We weren't able to fully catch up for a quote, but I know Tyler Atkinson was kind of taken aback and liked the hire initially when he heard about it. So there are different guys that are excited about it. And I know people say, "Oh, he's not going to be a great recruiter," whatever the personality may be. Like, this is a guy that loves defense, and he's going to be able to pitch guys on fitting into his defense. And it's similar. It's going to be similar to what Jim Knowles does. Do I think he's going to be working the phones as much as James Laurinaitis, Matt Guerrieri, Tim Walton? No, I really don't see Matt Patricia doing that. But this is a guy that has been in the NFL for years, that knows when I have a Caleb Downs type player at safety, my defense is unequivocally better. When I have a Tyler Atkinson type player at linebacker, I can do a lot more things with him, and the defense is better. So he's going to be involved in meeting with those people, whether it's going down to Grayson and spending a day or an evening to meet with Tyler and his dad, or it's going down to Mississippi to go watch Braylon Womack work out and getting to meet his parents. Like, there's going to be different things that I imagine Matt Patricia, whether he does or considers doing, or even if he just meets with people on official visits this summer, which we can talk about later. That's going to be important stuff because he is going to be pitching these parents and these kids on how they fit in the defense. And he obviously has a great idea on how to run a defense based on what he's done in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds good. The bottom line here is that, look, everything you want to say great about what Jim Knowles did, Ryan Day called him the best defensive coordinator in America. I will continue to say that. It's not my words, it's Ryan Day's words. And he knew he was leaving, and he still called him the best defensive coordinator in America. He knew he was likely going to go to a in-conference rival. He still called him the best defensive coordinator in America. Okay, so like high praise for Jim Knowles. Nobody, and I mean nobody, from players to people in the building to people around the country, are praising Jim Knowles and talking about the dogged nature of his recruiting process, okay? Everything that is great about Jim Knowles. Again, we're not going to say bad things about Jim other than like, hey, you left for Penn State. Like, come on, what are you doing? We will not talk about him as some ace recruiter because that's not what he is. So if Matt Patricia recruits, we can just stop there. If Matt Patricia recruits, he's an added bonus on the recruiting trail from what Jim Knowles was. And you know what? Matt Patricia spent, and I did some research on this just because I wanted to make sure that we had our facts straight. Matt Patricia spent 2024 not on a coaching staff, not as a special advisor to the vice principal or whatever in some football office. He spent 2024 working for the 33rd team with Bill Belichick, his old buddy and now the North Carolina head coach. He spent the 2024 season with the 33rd team, a website, studying college football. They weren't studying the NFL. They were studying college football. So now he knows how college football operates. He was on another podcast during the Super Bowl where he talked about he loves the college football game after studying it because it seems like every year is free agency. So, like, this guy has already seen some things in college football that he likes. He's going to have to understand that Ohio State is a high school recruiting operation that is supplemented by the transfer portal. And I think that once he gets in the building, he will start to understand that. But you can see already the seeds are being planted with some of these guys, these high school kids that, like, hey, this guy knows ball. At the bare minimum, whatever you want to say about Matt Patricia, again, as a human being, as a coach, as a leader of men, as a culture builder, he's not going to have to do a ton of that. He's not going to have to culture build. The culture is already here. He just has to adapt to the culture. It's the Ohio State culture. It's not the Matt Patricia culture. Hey, it's not even the Ryan Day culture. It's the Ohio State culture. So come in, adapt to the culture, make some phone calls, and make sure that all these recruits know, hey, I got 2 Super Bowl rings or 3 Super Bowl rings, 2 on the defensive side, and I know ball. I think that's going to be okay on the recruiting trail. What do you think?
I think so too. And I think we've seen with Deion Sanders when he got to Colorado, he hasn't done home visits. He hasn't done road visits. He doesn't go to the schools very often. Like, that's not Deion Sanders' model. Like, Bill Belichick spent the entire month of January on the road visiting schools. Obviously, he's the head coach of a program, the face of a program, so that's a little different. But Matt Patricia is still a guy that went to the college pro days. He went to the combine. He went to the Senior Bowl. He went to these events for scouting prospects because that's what he learned from Bill Belichick. And I think he'll want to do similar at Ohio State. Like, I don't know if he's going to be on the road all 30 days in May when the guys are there, but I imagine he'll be gladly to go take a trip down up to Cleveland and go see Storm Miller and Sincere Johnson, just work out, meet the families, and kind of get an idea of what those guys go down the road, see Caden Gephardt and CJ Sana at Lewis Center on Tangi. Like, go up the road again, go see Jacob Witherspoon and say, hey, can you play corner? Can you play safety? Let me get some informed opinions before he comes down. Like, that's just going to be a thing he does because he wants to have an idea on what's coming into his defense, whether he's here for 1 year or 10 years, whatever. He's going to want to make sure he has the best defense possible. And part of that is making sure you get the best players and find the best players. And he's now one of the coaches that'll be helping with that operation at Ohio State.
So, and here's the other thing. Man, people talk about the culture and whether he's a good guy or not a good guy. Ryan Day is about to find this out too. A ring on your finger is a hell of a drug, but it's also a hell of a recruiting pitch. Ryan Day went from having the block O on his chest to having a ring on his finger and the block O on his chest. If you're a high school prospect and Ryan Day comes to visit your high school or comes into your living room, he's going to wear the block O on his chest. That's step 1. He's going to have a national championship ring on his finger. That's step 2. He's going to have a guy with 3 Super Bowl rings on his finger, on 3 of his fingers. And that's step 3. And then he's going to bring in a Brian Hartline. He's going to bring in a James Laurinaitis. He's going to bring in a Tim Walton to say, like, hey, here's the guys I've developed. Oh, by the way, this guy has a national championship ring. I got my national championship ring. And then the guy heading the defense has 3 Super Bowl rings. That puts you in position to do good things and be successful no matter who the defensive recruit is. It doesn't matter. And so I think that this is a good thing for the recruiting trail. As long as Matt Patricia buys into the culture, understands what it means to be a Buckeye, and understands that, like, hey, you're not in the NFL anymore. You got to put some effort into getting these high school kids. And that's like the bare minimum. And then I think he's a value add on the recruiting trail. What do you think?
Yeah. I think he's a guy that he's won Super Bowls. He's won a lot of games coaching football. Like, guys like that don't want to lose, and they don't want to lose, and they don't want to be lazy. Like, they want to be proactive about adding the best players, making sure you're scouting the opponent, doing everything you can possible to give yourself an edge. And when it comes to, like, talent acquisition, that's recruiting. Like, give yourself an edge by getting the best players. Give yourself an edge in 2027 or 2026 because you have Braylon Womack and Fahim Delaney in your secondary. And because you have Sincere Johnson and Storm Miller to step up whenever Peyton Pierce and Riley Pettijohn and TJ Alford are done, or whenever they need a blow. Like, give yourself as much talent as possible. And now Matt Patricia just needs to focus on that. Like, he's not, like, I understand there's some people that might think he's kind of prickly or whatever, but he knows how, like, he's successfully coached football teams for a while. He's going to be able to come in, adapt to what Ohio State needs him to do, be active enough, be a net positive when it comes to coaching, recruiting. I don't know if he's going to be better than Jim Knowles. It's a high standard. Like you said, Ryan Day calls him the best defensive coordinator in America. Maybe Matt Patricia can be similar, can be up there, but, like, that is the standard. Just continue to bring positive value to the Ohio State coaching staff. And I think overall Matt Patricia will do that. Despite some of the questions about his success, off-field stuff, I think Matt Patricia will be able to do that when he gets on the field in March and in this season.
Look, this is kind of, I guess, the video that makes the case for Patricia, especially on the recruiting trail, because I know some people have questions about his recruiting acumen because he's never done it. I'm not telling you that this is the perfect hire. I wrote a column yesterday for LettermenRow.com in which I said, this is either a very questionable hire or the boldest move Ryan Day's made. Because there's 2 different things. If you think that this is bold, which some people do, then it's going to work out. It's going to be successful, and Ohio State will be good on defense. If you think this is a questionable hire, then you think that the Ohio State defense will lag. Matt Patricia will be back in the NFL or in the breadlines. So, that's just the bottom line. When do we find that out? August 30th. Because if Sark lights him up in the Ohio Stadium when they lift that championship banner on August 30th, nobody's going to care that Matt Patricia was a bad coach in the NFL. They're just going to think he's a bad coach for Ohio State. But if Ohio State goes out and Texas scores 14 points and Ohio State wins the game, where have we heard that before? Then you're going to be like, oh, wow, I think this defense is going to be okay. And against Grambling, against Ohio the next couple of weeks before we go to Washington, I think everything's going to work out pretty well. We will not know. And that's why I think this is good. That's why I think that the word of the day for this hire is interesting. That's a cop-out. It's vague. It's supposed to be vague. We have no clue if it's going to work out. He's never coached college football before. Because I'm telling you, a year at Amherst and a year at Syracuse do not count when they were in 2003 and 2004, because that's foreign college football. Like, Craig Krenzel was playing college football the last time that Matt Patricia coached college football. That gives you some ideas of Justin Zwick was starting at quarterback for Ohio State. Love you, Justin. The last time Matt Patricia was coaching college football. So again, we have no clue if this is going to work. But, there was some certainty with Jim Knowles. Like, hey, we know this guy's going to coach really good defense. There was some certainty when you hire Chip Kelly. Like, well, the run game's going to be fixed. With Matt Patricia, I don't know. And I wish I knew, because I wish I could sit here and be like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. Ohio State's going to go back-to-back, and they might win 3 straight. But we really just don't know. And I think that's the beauty of this hire, but it's also the questioning of this hire is like, Ryan Day, do you know that it's going to work? Because if you don't know that it's going to work, then all that goodwill that you just bought yourself with a national title might go out the window in a span of 6 months. Because if Patricia doesn't work, then you're back to, well, we're going to lose to Michigan, and then we'll have to try to fight in the college football playoff.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I have you've done this much longer than I have, but I've been around college football. I follow it. Like, we know that, like, everybody will have their opinion now. They go out on August 30th, and they hold the Texas Longhorns to 17 points, and Arch Manning throws 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Ohio State wins. like it'll be Matt Patricia's the greatest defensive coordinator in college football all over again. Like that is the cyclical cycle of college football coaching hires. And if they go out in the spring showcase or whatever, and Caleb Downs has 2 interceptions, or they do some kind of 7-on-7 and the defense doesn't allow a point, then he'll be the best defensive coordinator. And then if they allow 14 to Grambling or something 2 weeks later or a week later, then he'll be bad again. Like that's just, we'll see at this time next year how the whole experiment went over. And I know that's a very boring thing to say, but it's the truth of the matter.
Absolutely. So that's a nice round 30-minute Matt Patricia discussion on this edition of Lettermen Live presented by Wendy's. Usually we go about 45 minutes to an hour, but I want to keep this thing as Patricia-centric as possible, and there's nothing else really to say because, again, say it again, this is the most interesting hire Ryan Day has made at Ohio State because it's just, you don't know how it's going to go. Because even, one more about it, even the Kerry Combs hire, most people thought it was going to be a good hire. So it wasn't that interesting. Just, that's a good hire. Turned out to be a disaster. This one, there are some people who think it's going to be a disaster. Maybe it's a good hire. There's some people who think it's going to be great. Maybe it's a bad hire. It's the most polarizing and the most interesting hire that Ryan Day has made. If you haven't read my column about that, I implore you to go to lettermenrow.com. I'm not trying to plug my own stuff, but that one I will because I thought that I tried to lay it out as best as I could to people about like, hey, nobody knows. So if you think you know, you don't. So anyway, Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I'm Spencer Holbrook. I'm going to go eat some Wendy's because I am freaking starving, man. And Wendy's has 2 for $7. Make sure you go over to Wendy's. Get your 2 for $7. I almost said go to Wendy's.com. Is there a Wendy's.com? I don't know. Lettermen Row. There is a Wendy's app. Go to the Wendy's app. There is a LettermenRow.com. You should go there right now and get it while it lasts. There's a nice sale going on at LettermenRow.com for you to read all of Mick Walker's coverage, all of Alex Gleitman's coverage. AG crushing it on the intel lately. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys over at LettermenRow.com. Like the video below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's over at LettermenRow.com. Come hang out in the Lettermen Lounge. We'll see you guys there.